James is having kale salad with curry sauce, soup, grapes, bagel, and cake. And I'm going to be talking about Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest. That got top of the stack. And then The Haunting of Bly Manor, Last Night, The Marksman, and least of all, Elizabeth. And James has a different opinion about the Elizabeth thing than I did. But we'll get to that. So, anyway. North by Northwest. If you haven't seen this yet, let's see if I can find a date on this sucker.
1955, right?
59. Pretty good.
By 4.
Yeah. So it's a Cary Grant movie, and he looks handsome as ever. And I mean, there's the crop duster scene's very memorable.
Yeah.
A little bit silly, maybe.
What the hay?
The hay. It's memorable.
Spying stuff is
and
kind of crazy too.
Eva Marie's, is that her name? Eva Marie Saint?
Yeah, something like that.
What a weird name.
Was that the blonde?
Yeah, she's very beautiful.
Yeah, well, the usual blonde, you know.
Well, she wasn't a bad actress either. I've just never heard of her. But anyway, so she, I think the funniest scene with her was when they were climbing on Mount Rushmore on the bases and stuff. And at first she's wearing heels and carrying her little handbag while she's trying to do some rock climbing. And it's so funny, right? Because I don't know if you were being chased and you had a good possibility of dying, maybe you too wouldn't think, that's it, I gotta toss these shoes. You know, eventually you see that she's not wearing the shoes. She's lost them along the way, and the handbag, it's gone. But it is funny that she starts out. She's rock climbing with the high heels.
It's kind of subtle because he's doesn't show her tossing the stuff.
No.
Say, well,
all of a sudden she doesn't have them, right? So you know, okay, well, either she's tossed them or she's just lost them because she's whatever.
But it's not bad continuity.
No, it's great. And the best ending ever of any movie. So good. It's I don't want to give it away.
Now it's the first time you've seen it.
So good.
Right? Is that what you were saying?
I don't know. I think I've seen it before because I did remember the crop duster thing.
Mm-hmm. Well,
but I would have been young
it
when I saw it because I remember when I first discovered that I loved Alfred Hitchcock movies. It was I loved Rear Window. And
Jimmy Stewart,
I was actually watching the Alfred Hitchcock Presents first, and then my dad realized, oh, she likes Alfred Hitchcock stuff, and so then he'd rent a movie from the Hitchcock movie, and I'd love it. So I loved Rear Window. It was the best movie ever. But my dad preferred Vertigo, so he got me to watch that too, and it was good.
With Kim Novak, eh?
Yeah.
Is that Jimmy Stewart as well?
Yeah. So anyway, and we went through whatever Dad could find in Grand Prairie for rent for probably on beta at that time. But anyway, so we probably did go through this one because I did remember the crop duster scene. So, but it obviously when I was a little kid it didn't make an impression on me, but it sure does now. The Haunting of Bly Manor. So this one is, I guess, a mini-series or whatever. Can I call it a mini-series? Because it's 3 discs. That's quite a lot of, I don't know how many minutes it says here. So, 484 minutes. So that's quite long. And honestly, I liked the beginning more. Once you got into Hannah's story, like I wasn't even thinking that Hannah was a main character or anything like that. The thought did cross my mind of what happened, but I didn't really, it's just like, oh, okay, whatever. But once you're getting into Hannah's story, that's awesome. And then it kind of went downhill from there. And I don't know why, because it should have, as you're getting into everyone else's story, it should get better, but it didn't. Kind of, in the end, somebody in the story says, I don't know why you said it was a ghost story. It's a love story or whatever. And yeah, it turned into that. And I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it didn't work out too great with this. That's why this didn't get top of the stack. Because when I'm watching it at first, I'm like, oh, this is so scary, and I had to turn it off a few times when I was watching it at night, and I thought, okay, I need a break, right? So very scary at parts, and then kind of fell flat, and I was disappointed. I didn't really, the lady in the lake thing, I didn't get enough, it didn't seem to make sense, really. Maybe they should have put a little more into that to make it make sense more, but...
Is this based on something by Walter Scott? Was it an English production?
Well, they're in England, but how am I supposed to know? I don't know.
Might say in
It says director, creator Mike Flanagan. I don't know, James. I don't know.
Were they? Did they have English accent?
Yes. Except for the character who was supposed to be American. She had an American accent. It was very well done. Well acted. Just I didn't like the... After Hannah, I thought it went downhill. That's all. So, last night. I've seen this one before, but it's been a long time. I don't know when this thing was made. I can't remember when I saw it. But you know what? The writing is really small, and I have a hard time anyway. I can't tell you. Just look it up. Look it up. You're on the computer anyway. So, I don't know. I guess I don't really... Sandro is okay. It has a bunch of people in it. Sarah Pauline, David Cronenberg. But one of the year's best movies, period. I don't know. I don't know what year this was put out, but I think that's probably a little bit exaggerated. It's not bad. The Marksman. I love watching Liam Neeson in his action roles. I just love him. But this one, maybe my least favorite so far.
That's too bad.
Yeah, I know. And I don't know if it's really, there's some faults with the story. I really didn't like maybe the boy would say, oh, she would have lived if it weren't for you, or whatever. But it's unrealistic. I mean, the guys were right behind them, so it's like, no, she would have been killed even faster, and so would you have. But I don't know. I don't know if this guy would go to those lengths. I mean, the whole scene with the money. It's like, okay, first he would go deal with his issues with that money, I would think. But anyway, so. And then when you finally see what they do with the money, it's like, okay, this is ridiculous. This is just, nobody would do that. And if they did, they're really stupid. And I don't get the impression that the character that Liam Neeson played in this was really stupid. You might say, okay, well, he was an ex-Marine, whatever, farmer, rancher, kind of, whatever. But that doesn't mean he's an idiot. And anyway, so I didn't care for the movie. Now James is going to talk about Elizabeth a bit. All I'm going to say about this was a terrible commercial. It's like they were trying all sorts of different kinds of music that the Queen wouldn't have listened to. She wouldn't have cared. I mean, who did she knight? Look, why weren't they playing those people's music or whatever? Because she knighted some people that were musicians.
Well, there you
go. I didn't hear them. I heard all sorts of, there was rapper, there was all sorts of stuff that she wouldn't have listened to on here. And so they're trying to just grab all sorts of parts of the population and say, oh, you love her.
She's your queen.
Yeah. And it really didn't say much about the Queen. Elizabeth,
was
a
trying to
portrait in
listen
parts.
for
It's more of
stuff.
a portrait of an. It's an advertisement
Yeah.
in
For
parts.
royalty,
An
yeah.
advertisement in many parts for like, however, an hour or whatever. What? How long was this thing? It seemed way too long.
It seemed to go on for 3 hours.
Yeah, I don't think it was 3 hours long, but it seemed too long. Because how long can you listen to an advertisement for? It was bad.
A series of
And
advertisements.
they
really,
could
yeah.
have taught us a lot of things about Elizabeth, but no, they want to just make her out like some cute little old lady that says some cute things about, oh, my crown is so heavy, so I can't bend my head
I
over.
think she was saying it would break her neck or something like that if she bent her head.
Who cares? Oh my gosh. So anyway, you can talk about Elizabeth if you want.
I didn't grasp any more about it than you did. You know.
It's just stupid. I can't believe that they made this stupid movie.
Generally, I like the music they were playing.
Okay.
But that was about it.
Well, why don't you go ahead and talk about whatever you want to talk about then, if you don't want to talk about Elizabeth.
Well, I didn't really grasp much out of it.
Okay.
I'd have been listening to one of these. What sort of craziness is here? Oh, cluster bomb. So it seems like every time the United States or Europe gets set to give the Ukraine a few armaments that the Ukrainians need to get the Russian terrorists under Putin, war criminals, terrorists under Putin, off of their territory. Putin raises a hue and cry, and the useful idiots who are making all sorts of hues and cries for the Soviets are at it, backing up Putin. Oh, you can't give Putin offensive weapons like planes, because I don't know what people are afraid of. Will the Ukrainians go and
You
bomb?
said Putin. You can't give Putin.
Yeah, you can't give the Ukrainians. Sorry, I finished. I only got 15 hours of sleep. No, 15 minutes. See how tired I am. From midnight on till about 4 o'clock when I woke up this morning. And then I had maybe 15 minutes of sleep once we got back. Thank heavens it wasn't 15 minutes of sleep driving back from Waterloo. So I'm a little bit tired, and we did a little bit of hiking. I figure maybe 16 kilometers of hiking. No real elevation to speak of on any of the trails.
It's easy stuff to do.
But still, given my sleep-deprived condition, a little bit challenging. So I'm going to be making all sorts of mistakes. Anyway. Oh gosh, you can't give the Ukrainians offensive weapons like planes. And never mind the fact that the Russians are up in Ukrainian airspace, bombing the Ukrainians. Troops, civilians, apparently. And the Ukrainians can't use planes to fight the Russians over their very own territory. Oh, but they're offensive weapons. Now, I'm sure some of the people, maybe a lot of them that are making the fuss, think that the Russians have a legitimate claim to all of the Ukraine, or at least to the eastern territories of the Ukraine, to the Crimea. They have a legitimate claim to none of the above. I refer you to any self-respecting history of the Ukraine and or the Soviet Union and or the Russian Empire, preferably and in every case. And you'll find, or should find, that the Russians have no claim over any part of the Ukraine, and in actual fact, the Ukrainians have claims, legitimate claims, on parts of so-called Russia right now. So in the Don area, near the mouth of the Don, in the Kuban area, Kuban, so it's kind of like Mark Cuban, I believe, the former owner, if not the present owner of the Dallas Mavericks. Dolorous Mavericks. They're not that dolorous. I think they might have actually won the NBA championship recently. Maybe they did. Who knows? Anyway, yeah, and now it's cluster bombs. Oh, the Russians have been using cluster bombs on the Ukrainians, on Ukrainian territory. The Ukrainians want to use cluster bombs against the Russians on Ukrainian territory. Oh, hue and cry, hue and cry. Oh, you can't do that. What? On your own territory to get rid of rapists and child kidnappers and nuclear terrorists, people who've stolen Western Europe's biggest nuclear power station. They've just stolen it, and like under force of arms. But you can't fight back against them. Yeah, yeah. No, the Americans should provide the Ukrainians with, so long as they're not attacking civilian populations, it's preferable that they really don't attack Russia very much, but Russian civilians. So there's a big hue and cry today. The Russians have been supplying the Crimea over a bridge, and the Ukrainians blew up at least a portion of it in the last 24 hours. Oh, hue and cry, at least from Russia. There'll be a hue and cry for the useless. They're not even useful idiots anymore. You support Russia right now. You're not even like you folks that were supporting Russia during the Cold War, and face it, you were. You were supporting them in Vietnam. You were supporting them in Korea. You were supporting them in Taiwan. You were supporting, and not just the Russians, the communist Chinese. In the case of Taiwan, you were basically supporting them by wanting them to be, the Chinese to be approved for the United Nations. It's a tacit approval of their invasion of, illegal as all get out, of Tibet in 1950 maybe, a year or so after they got rid of the so-called nationalist regime, and just on and on. You made all sorts of goofy mistakes. You pooped yourself in public again and again and again during the Cold War, and now you're pooping yourself in public again, making an embarrassment of yourself, and not just that, an embarrassment of the whole socialist movement. Lenin had two words for you, combined into a kind of like a phrase. Useful idiots. But you're not even useful anymore, because Putin, newsflash, is not really a socialist. He doesn't like privatization, he doesn't like capitalism, and so on and so forth. But, well, I'd call him like a Nazi commie, maybe. I don't know how much communism survives there, but he's a Nazi and stuff like that. And there you guys are. It's like you're. If it were Hitler, you'd be saying, like it's awful what's happening in Poland in 1939, or what happened in Czechoslovakia in 1938, or in what's now the Czech Republic, not so much Slovakia tended to collaborate with, ultimately a lie that I'm not mistaken with Hitler. So yeah, you guys are just absolutely clueless. Your moral compass is in the no, it's not even in the wrong direction. It's just you don't have a needle on your moral compass. That's how bad you guys are. You're not even smart enough to be evil. Putin is evil. You just kind of like knee-jerk react. Whoop whoop whoop. It doesn't matter which foot, right wing, left wing, you know. Wow, wow, wow. Just whatever Putin does, just so long as it's against NATO or the so-called American empire, or if it's against capitalism, or if it's against Calvinism, or if it's against Judeo-Christianity. Although the third part of the Judeo-Christian tradition you're just absolutely enthused about. It's so much more tolerant of you than Judaism and Christianity and stuff like that. Never mind the historical record, because holy smokes, and you mentioned that, and you're a phobe. You are just phobic about that particular religion, and your knee-jerk reaction about what you call Zionism, and on it goes. You're priding yourself in your toleration, and yet you refuse to tolerate Calvinism, Judaism, Christianity, Zionism, capitalism, stuff like that. And if there are people of color involved, you will tolerate Nazism, but you're intolerant about Nazism. I'm going, yeah, well, like I don't tolerate Nazism. I try to be consistent. I don't tolerate communism. I don't tolerate belief systems that have been around longer than those belief systems, and have historical record that are I don't tolerate phalangism. That are worse than phalangism, about as bad as fascism. No, yeah, as bad as communism, worse I think than fascism, or about the same, and maybe not quite as bad as Nazism. Yeah. I try to be consistent. I guess it's kind of easier for me because although the color doesn't show, my parents have told me that I'm part Indigenous American, part African American, and my dad said possibly part South Asian. So it's kind of easy for me not to get worried about being prejudiced. Oh, the term is racist, isn't it now? Prejudiced against people of color and stuff like that. Get on the stick and be consistent. If there's a Nazi commie regime in where the people running it are people of color, it's as bad as if it's Hitler. Someone who said, what's the term? A person of non-color? I don't know what it is. What is it politically correct? Probably don't say anything. Oh, white. Yeah, disgusting. Talk about racism. It's not even reverse racism. Just it's revenge racism. Combined with class, of course.
It's going to end up on the table.
Yeah. So there was the fuss about people of color. I think generally people from Africa who'd been students in Ukraine, and when the Ukrainians were trying to evacuate their women and children, old folks, they wanted to go to the front of the bus, but the train. Oh, that's fascinating. How many? They had one guy on CBC who was fighting and clawing, and he got out, fighting and clawing, to get on a Ukrainian train. How many of these folks are responsible by jumping the train, jumping the queue, for Ukrainian kids who've been kidnapped and then apparently put up for adoption? I don't know if that's a suburban myth or an ex-urban myth, or I don't think it's a suburban or ex-urban myth that Ukrainian women have been raped by Russian troops. And I can remember one person with a PhD, Oh, well, you know, like he figured that the Ukrainian women apparently should be required to stay and fight the Russians like the men were. And I'm thinking, I said, I thought out loud, well, who's going to take care of the children? It hadn't seemed to occur to this fella with the PhD. Who's going to take care of their children? And I haven't heard him say to me, I am in semi-regular contact with him, I haven't heard him say, you know, James, you were right. Look at what the Russians did to the, or have done to Ukraine, and might still be doing, to Ukrainian women and children. Look at that. You were right. No, you know, like, that was another issue. It would have been, you know, like really pushed by Putin and his media hacks and hawks and stuff like that. Now look at the Ukrainians. They're such racists, and the Poles behind them. Yeah, this person that I talked with, the PhD, he was saying, you know, like the people of color were jumping the trains in Ukraine. And he said, well, the Poles are racist. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, that's a red herring, if there ever was one. A red herring as big as a whale. And neon red, if there's such a color. Why is that? They're jumping the trains in Ukraine. The issue is not whether the Poles are racist, but whether the Ukrainians are. And what's the scene? Even if the Poles, you know, like if the Poles are such racists, why would these people of color be running towards them? Wouldn't they be running towards the Russian lines? Save us from these racists, you wonderful, peace-loving, tolerant Russians, you. Just like you've been peaceful and tolerant, or were during the Cold War, during all of Putin's administration. Save us, save us. You know, like, what were these nifty, shifty, hefty lefties thinking? That the Russians were going to grab hold of these people from Africa, put guns to their heads and say, okay, you Ukrainians, you surrender, or we're going to blow these guys to kingdom come. Come on. You guys get real. I'm getting sick and tired of you. The Americans, the Europeans, Canadians, Australians, people from New Zealand, they're about the only countries in the world that support the Ukraine. Everywhere else, the United Nazis, nations, how could I make that mistake? They're basically saying, you know, the Ukrainians, surrender. We want, it's not so much need, we demand your wheat and your fertilizer and stuff like that. Shame on you. You're supporting settler, colonial, imperialists in the form of the Russians by insisting that the Ukrainians surrender so you can get their wheat. Shame on you, United Nazis. I'm signing off on that. That's what the UN stands for, United Nazis.